are the software engineering group for this semester. We're working on a project called Zombie. I'm going to be, I guess, the team leader, and we've got two pairs of programmers who will be working on this. Marquise, Alonzo, and Jovan, who aren't here, and Danielle. Danielle will be working on graphics. We're all going to be testing the program. Myself, Alonzo, and Jovan will be setting up test environments and work environments. Myself and Jovan will be kind of writing the game logic and getting the game ready for coding. And then everybody's going to kind of be working together on documentation. So kind of an overview of what we're working on. I don't know how many of you have played Oregon Trail. It's kind of an older game. But we decided that we wanted to make an adaptation of something kind of like Oregon Trail for Android. And kind of use a zombie theme with it. So the idea is that you start up right after a zombie apocalypse and the world is now desolate and you need to try to survive as long as you can with as many people as you can. Like I said, we're going to be working with the Android platform. We're not sure what version of the SDK we're going to be using yet. There are several different versions, both with pros and cons. And so once we have fully specified the game and understand exactly what the logic is going to need, we'll be deciding from there. So the purpose of this colloquium is to kind of introduce everybody to the game, what our ideas are for the game right now, and also get some input from other people as to what the game should involve, what maybe we should change, what we should think about, so that we can, when we start writing, write the best app for the most people. Because it's not very helpful to us if we write a game that's only fun for us. So this is going to be kind of more of a discussion than a colloquium. We want as much input from you guys as we can get.
One of the features that we decided on, in the original Oregon Trail, it was more of like a money-based currency, I guess you could say, that you went, basically you travel for a day, and eventually you get to a town where you can buy more supplies, and that's how you restock. So we decided to add a bit of difficulty with that, and adding a weight, to where basically there would be 3 difficulties, and basically the easiest, you'd be riding in like a Hummer. The medium difficulty, you'd be riding like a pickup truck, and a regular car for the hardest difficulty, and have like a weight distribution like 1,400 to 1,500 pounds. And then you'd have different resources like maybe like repair kits for your car, medikits for when people get sick, of course food, ammunition, things like that. And we figured that the weight would be an extra difficulty just because you couldn't just stock up all this money and get to a town and buy stuff. And we figured after the zombie apocalypse, I mean, what use is money? It doesn't make a lot of sense to us, so we decided that would be one of our main features that we'd be doing. And what does everybody think about that? Using weight instead of money as a major currency.
This would be more like a limiting factor, like your longevity depends on how much you can carry, so you can't carry as much.
What do you buy the stuff with exactly? You said there's no real money, so like when you get to a town or something, or a place where you buy stuff, what do you actually buy it with?
Well, in the original Oregon Trail, most of the way that you gathered most of your resources either by stopping for a day and hunting, or by coming across an abandoned wagon. And so those kind of events will be, natural in the game. You'll find an abandoned gas station and buy some gas. But what we were thinking about doing is having some sort of a barter system, like 2 med kits is 100 pounds of ammunition, something like that. Just some sort of a static bartering system, so that you don't just lose money and then gain resources. You have to trade off with resources. think is kind of our idea.
So you'd have a maximum weight you can carry, and that would be the determining factor. You decide what the items you find, what you want to take.
Right, and then the cap for how much weight you can carry depends on your difficulty. So obviously if you select a harder difficulty for the game, you're not going to be able to carry as much. So in the original Oregon Trail, a lot of times what would happen is somebody would just get randomly sick, or you come against an obstacle. The obstacles in our games are obviously going to be zombie type encounters. But we aren't exactly sure how to work this in. In Oregon Trail, it just kind of happens to, it's like, surprise, somebody has dysentery. But we want it to be a little bit more fluid. I mean, we're working with a much stronger platform than what Oregon Trail was done. So we're thinking about having multiple types of encounters for each type. So maybe somebody gets bitten, maybe somebody gets taken. But at the same time, we don't want to lose the look and feel of Oregon Trail, where it's kind of a 2D image. It looks a little cheesy, but that's kind of part of the charm of it. So we were wondering what kind of encounters you guys would like to see in a game like this. Do you want to just get ambushed by zombies, or, you know, like, would you like to be a hard-hitting kind of event, or would you like it to be a trickle-down effect, like you're slowly dwindling away? Yes. I guess it depends on what kind of play style you want. Like, do you want this to be a drawn-out kind of game where maybe you can't survive? You're just trying to survive as long as you can, or would you rather this to be, you know, a short and quick game where, you know, you're going to die, but you can win by making it a certain distance or something.
You might have think of a safe zone where there would be safety, but you have to go out there to get your supply.
Well, like if you pull into a camp or something like that where you would be resupplying, those would be safe areas. Yeah.
Well, what was the purpose of the original Oregon Trail? I remember it as an educational game.
Well, it could be used as an educational game. I don't remember it that way. But, it basically, you start off at the beginning of your journey to the west, and you're trying to get a bunch of people across terrain with a wagon. And so you start off with, I think it was 4 or 5 people, and then you have a static amount of money that you can buy your initial supplies with, and then you're trying to go, you know, float your wagon across rivers and make it across the desert, or, you know, circle the wagons against Indians. I don't particularly remember all the specifics, but, you know, every so often a random event would happen. You know, one of your oxen pulling the cart would die and you'd have to eat it or something, or a wagon wheel would break. And so a lot of times you would die trying to get to your destination just because of the difficulties. But the goal of the game was to get there despite all the random events that were happening during this difficult. So that's what we're kind of trying, the idea that we're trying to get somewhere and survive. So we'll talk about then difficulty then with that. We had several ideas for how to manage the difficulty. I think that the idea that we pretty much decided on using for now is just the more difficult you choose the game, there will be, you know, 3 or 4 different levels. Obviously the weight will change, how much you can carry, but also the frequency of events. So if events are on a random interval, maybe on a higher difficulty you have more of the violent or disease events and less of the random gear events. We also had an idea for difficulty continuing with the weight theme, but not so much about the random events. Maybe your objective is further away, and we value difficulty by how far you have to go. so therefore increasing the number of random events. But we aren't sure what people are going to want in terms of play style. If they're going to want a quick 5-minute game, or they're going to want something that they can save and come back to later. So that's kind of what we're hoping to get from you guys. When you guys play a game like this, or if you were to play a game like this, would you want it to be a quick game you could play between classes, or would you want it to be something you got to save?
Two modes.
Two modes?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Quick and easy today and long and drawn out all weekend.
Okay. So wrestling both. That would be interesting. Another thing that we're looking to do is we're going to design our own graphics. So there are a lot of different graphic styles in games. There are, really cheesy line drawings, stick character games, games that look like old games, and then, flash style games, vector style games, things like that. And we're really kind of up in the air as to what kind of style choice to go for. So when you guys look at a game, what kind of games do you find visually appealing? Just like if you were looking at a game, what would make you want to play it? Is it colorful, vectorized? Is it not vectorized? Old style games? What you guys want to see? What would you like to see?
Rich, high def, 3D.
I don't know about 3D. I don't think we're going to be writing an HDL, but
Not on your phone.
no. Well, you can, but it's
Not on your phone. You could do that. You look at Office.
What have y'all thought about? I mean, do you have, is this the first discussion of this stuff? I mean,
no.
have you
Well,
decided on
we've
certain
kind of
things?
decided what we think is okay, but we wanted to go out and talk to people besides the 6 of us in our group and see what other people thought. Like, it's one thing to make a game just for us, but we want to actually put this on the Android market. And for it to work well, it should appeal to a broad audience of people. And so we're trying to decide, based on a group of people, what would be best to work in.
Have you considered have you considered the constraints on your time and skill level as far as what kind of graphics you're going to choose to do?
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty adept with Illustrator, so putting together vector graphics is not a difficult thing to do. And one of the nice things about the way that Android graphics works is you can go and do 3D things. It's a lot more work. But if you're just using 2D layered graphics, it's just like working with layers like in Photoshop or Illustrator or anything like that, where you have, you can set up as many layers as you want, and then you control them with things called sprites. And so you just control it with percentages on the screen. So you just say, this is in front of this, and it's going to move this way. It's actually really simple to code. The complexity then is just how much you put in it, because obviously the more you manage, the more efficient it has to be. Otherwise, it's going to run slow. So in terms of graphics, it's just creating static images and then animating them with Android itself.
So how many different sprites do you foresee having in this game?
Well, for movement sprites, probably 3 main ones. I mean, you're going to have a vehicle and a foreground and a background. And then maybe we'll have event-based images. I mean, like if you get attacked by a horde of zombies, we'll get a horde of zombies concept or something like that. But the whole idea is not necessarily to have a highly, I guess, graphically intense game, because Oregon Trail wasn't that way. It's a thought-based and a resource-based game. So you'll be able to see what's going on, but it's not going to be like you're controlling a character. You're going to be controlling events through menus and things like that. Kind of like a turn-based idea. Any other comments or
looking at 10 screens of zombie games right now for the Android.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I found one that's a zombie version of Oregon Trail.
Yeah, there's a lot of duplicate apps for what, I mean,
I know, but
thousands and thousands of apps.
so I'm just wondering, I mean, everything I've read about Oregon Trail in the last 3 minutes has said it's an educational game.
Okay.
And that was why it caught on.
Okay.
And I'm just wondering, you know, you're asking us about this, but there's a lot of history behind all of this too. If you're going to use that as your model.
Right, we're using that as an idea, like a springboard, but we still want to make our own game.
Okay.
And that's why we're here. Like, if we wanted to exactly clone Oregon Trail, then yeah, we could just go and play Oregon Trail and copy it verbatim. But that's not what we're trying to do. Like, we like that idea, that resource-based, you know, kind of turn-based, event-based game. But we want to make it our own, and we want to make it something that appeals to everybody.
Okay.
Well then, what about doing something like quests based on, you said something about random encounters. What about making quests as far as that happens? You said something like, if Oregon Trail, if you're going along the path and you have random events that happen to the crew or to the characters, but it still stays relatively linear, right? What if you instead had that encounter actually spawn off into a quest of some sort, and then you go from there?
The difficulty with that is that you turn it into an objective-based game instead of a survival-based game. And so, like, for example, if you wanted to play a quick game, like we were talking about having a long game and a short game, I don't exactly know how you would do a quick game with quests. So maybe
I say quest, but I mean something that takes you off the normal, your normal trail. You take it off, and then have to like get your member back, and then get back on it.
Okay. So maybe that would be a decision type thing. Like, do you want to waste 3 days and go and get this person, or do you want to continue?
That, or maybe there's some kind of cache of goods off in that way.
Right. And those would be the type of random events that we're talking about. Like, we hadn't thought about something like that, but that would definitely be something easy to put in the game that forces you to make a decision that could quite possibly affect your outcome. And so that's kind of exactly what we're looking for. Any other ideas? Do you guys? Like, what are your favorite Android games you like to play? Something that we can kind of look at and go from. I mean, Angry Birds, obviously. Everybody likes Angry Birds. So, you know, it's not what we're creating. That's kind of the graphic style we're thinking about.
Did you say that they were levels or just like different checkpoints that?
There are going to be stages. Like, let's say the easy level, if your journey is going to take 3 months and you have a Humvee. So, you know, like you'll go through like a forest and a desert and a city, and the challenges will be based on that. You know, like you're not going to be attacked by a bear in the city, but in terms of levels, it's just going to be difficulty based. So, like maybe on a harder difficulty, you'll have to go through 2 different deserts, but I don't think that there would necessarily be a level.
Are you thinking of being able to form your original group somehow, some decisions there, or are you given a group?
Well, you're given a vehicle. So the idea is that you can fit 4 people in the vehicle, and part of your scoring is keeping everybody alive. So I mean, it's great if you can get to the end, but you're the only one alive. But it's even better if you can get to the end and you have all 4 of your people alive.
I was thinking the 4 being family, friends, acquaintances.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
With the original Zombie Trail, what you can do is put in the names of people. And so we're going to do something like that where you can say, you know, we're going to have this person, this person, and this person. And then one of the people is going to be yourself. So I guess you'd be able to choose 3 other people to go with you. And each person would have their own set of statistics that would be visible, you know. So like maybe it's a picture of a person, and then if it's green, they're healthy. If it's yellow, they're getting sick, and if it's red, they're about to go. And so managing the people, managing your resources, and managing your time is going to be the objective of the game.
This is the 480 class. Do you have any artifacts of those? And have you produced any documents or meeting notes, anything like that?
We have our documents from when we were playing this, but this has been kind of a quick change of events. We had an original project with a client, and in the process of trying to get specifications and information about that project, the client wasn't there, was unreachable, didn't know what they wanted or even what they needed. And so we spent several weeks working with this person trying to get information and build a project, and it got to the point where we couldn't even build a project. So we actually had to switch modes and start building this about a week ago. And so this was kind of a quick decision to start this, and we're developing as fast as we can. But our original plan, not because of fault of our own, fell through. So we kind of had to make a decision to do this.
With that, did y'all adjust the scale of your project, or are you still? It sounds like it's a big undertaking.
Well, it sounds like a big undertaking, but the reality is that a lot of the logic behind it is random. So it's going to be a set of coefficients effectively. So we have this event that happens, which might, in terms of coding the screenplay for it, might only last a couple seconds. And it's going to happen multiple times. So it's not like we're going to be coding out the full story. We're going to be coding out small bits of the story, and then they'll piece themselves together. So in terms of the amount of code to be written, across 4 people coding, it's not going to be super big. Some of the research that I did was about Android project management and app development time, and they say that for an app, I'd say that this is a medium-sized app. It's not a huge app, like a 3D game or an RPG or something like that. And it's not tiny either. It's not handmade. But they say usually about 18 to 20 hours of coding for 4 people coding is average, and we have that time. We have 3 2-week iterations that we're going to be doing this in. The first iteration is going to be kind of like the framework, the menus, and getting a phone database set up for save games and load games. And then the second iteration will be writing a lot of the logic. So we'll have 2 full weeks of everybody working together just to write the game logic. And then the third week, or the third iteration, the third 2 weeks, will be go ahead and tying the graphics in with the logic. And so throughout all 3 iterations, we'll be working on graphics. We'll be working on defining the logic, so that when it comes down to write the logic, it should just be translation from ideas into code. So I think the way that we've got it set up, the way it's going to be managed, it was definitely doable in 6 weeks. Yeah, 6 weeks.
Who now is your client?
Ourselves right now. And the idea is to get it into the Android market. So I guess Android users are our client.
Hard to get feedback fast from them.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
How will you pick an Android platform? You said there's a lot of pros and cons to be discussing with them.
Yeah, well, the higher up an API we go, the less phones are going to be supported. Like, for example, if we go with 4.0, that's going to knock out a good portion of the phone market. But there's a lot of cool new things in 4.0. So, like, the graphics would be a little bit easier to write, the interfacing would be a lot easier. But, like I said, we've knocked out a whole bunch of phones. We could go back all the way to 2.1, which is supported by pretty much every phone on the market. But that will require us to do a little bit more in-depth hand coding. So I don't know if you've used the most recent Eclipse plugin, but right now you can pretty much write an app just by dragging it out and then going in and editing the code afterward. Obviously that wouldn't work for our application. But essentially the higher up in the API you go, the more availability you have to do fun things.
But how will you make a decision? I mean,
We're
you're
gonna
talking
figure
about
out
starting coding soon.
what things we absolutely need to write it. So I need to go back and look through like 2.1 through 2.4 and see where the bulk of the graphics thing is, because logic is just going to be straight Java. But need to see where the sprite movements, I know we're a little weird in 2.1 and 2.2. So find exactly where that balance is, and then we'll pick that API. But that's going to require a lot more digging.
What's your deadline for making a SDK decision?
In a week from Monday.
So you're gonna wait a week? So you're gonna use up one of your 6 weeks making a decision?
No. We have 6 weeks after. We're in an iteration right now. We're planning. So we are 1 week into a 2-week iteration right now. We have 1 more week to go in this. Where we're still researching Android. We're getting everybody up to speed on Android. Everybody knows Java. We're just learning some specific API things. And then starting a week from Monday will be our second iteration. And that's when we start coding. So that will be the deadline for deciding on an API.
Do all the team members have Android devices?
Most of us do.
What version do most of the team members have? What's the lowest version? Gingerbread, I think, is what most of us are running. But we'll be putting it on the phone. But I think a majority of our development is going to be done through the virtual Android device, because you can just upload it directly that way. And then when we start getting towards testing at the end of an iteration, so we'll develop some code and then we'll test it every iteration. So we'll be doing testing phases 3 times and then one big final one. That's when we'll be moving to a phone. And so we'll probably only need a couple of phones. I don't think everybody will have to have a phone with them. We'll, put the app on a couple of phones and then pass it around and play it as much as we can, find our bugs, fix them, and then go back to virtual phones.
Do you think that you have like a focus group of some type when you finish the game, or are you going to really sit on the Android market and then wait for like the comments for the
Well, we'd like to have a focus group. That's kind of what we're trying to start up here. We want, some ideas from people as well as people to test the game. And so I know we have a few people also from the engineering department who are going to help us out with testing the game that also have like Android tablets and things like that. So I guess, we're going to try and have a focus group at the end, but we're not sure who they're going to be yet. Any other comments or suggestions?
So your development's going to be in Eclipse, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. What are you going to use for like source control, and where are you going to put your artifacts and that kind of stuff?
Eclipse has some integration for full subversion and Git if you use the right packages, and so we're going to try and blend those
going to be the random events. I think that's what's going to make it most fun and actually draw the users in. Because the rest of the game, the layout of the game is pretty simple. It's 2D, you go from point A to point B. Things that attract you to the game and make it enjoyable to play are the different types of random events. Going back to the educational aspect of it, from what I remember of the original Oregon Trail, the educational aspect was you would, the random events, you would either read a description of the place you're currently going by, or you like have a dialogue, interact with somebody, like gives you some educational information, just some historical information it usually was. And I don't know how relevant that would be in a post-apocalyptic world, because you wouldn't have people telling you. But I guess one thing we're considering was, as you're going by and you have the post-apocalyptic world, maybe you have a description wherever you are of what the place used to be, or just little things to add on to the game to make it, nice. So is there anything else? Any ideas you had that you'd like to see? If you were in a post-apocalyptic world, what would you want to have around you?
What do you use to like kill the zombies? Like you'd be fighting them, right? Like would you be fighting off zombies, or you just like trying to keep the thing alive?
You're given, or depending on the difficulty, you'll be given a certain amount of ammunition in the beginning, and then it's ordered for ammunition later, or find ammunition in the warehouse, or wherever it is. I can think of mainly the ammunition. I don't know what type of, I don't know if we had settled on specific ammunition.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna have like, you can pick your weapons and then armor your vehicle and set it up like an FPS. But it's gonna be basically if you have a zombie attacking, it's gonna take so much to kill one zombie. So let's say it takes a random number of bullets between 1 and 5 to kill a zombie. So whenever you encounter a zombie, it's going to subtract that from your ammunition. And then if you encounter a group of zombies, if there's 5 of them, then you're going to multiply that times 5. And so you're going to generate 5 random numbers between 1 and 5. And then it's kind of like a dice roll. I don't know if you've played any role-playing games like that, but you're going to be dice rolling a lot to figure out what your resource uses are going to be.
How will you regain it? Like you kill? Like when you kill, do you get points for it? Is that how you regain the more after you kill? Or like how do you go along? Like once you kill, are you gonna get rewarded for killing the zombies, or you just trying to stay alive?
Well, yeah, you're going to be able to scavenge, kind of thing. So one of the types of random events is going to be kind of like an abandoned gas station or a returned truck or an empty tent or something like that, and you'll gain resources that way randomly. And then whenever you kill a group of zombies, you can scavenge what you want. But I mean, zombies don't usually carry stuff, so that's not going to be your reward. Your reward is going to be living. So I guess it's not so much a reward-based game in that regard.
Are you planning on somewhere in the zombie trails having Twinkies?
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 We can definitely work Twinkies in. Marquise is writing Twinkies in really big letters on the page right now. So we'll give you your Twinkies.
So are there anything, or for those people who played Oregon Trail, is there any aspect of it that you would really want us not to remove or make sure that we keep it in? We might be losing a bit of the educational aspect of it. We're trying to make it more of just a fun game. But is there any aspect of the original game that you strongly suggest that we keep?
I would say it had to be just a character.
Just a character.
Do you guys have like a copy of Oregon Trail that you're trying to draw parallels to, or you're recalling from memory?
On the computer, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna be different when you're playing on your phone. So
The original Oregon Trail is a little bit difficult to run just because it's a very, very old game. But there are a lot of remakes of it that are pretty close to the original. And there's a lot of information online about how Oregon Trail worked. So, like how it was written, what kind of events would happen, and how frequent and things like that. Oregon Trail was a lot more story-based. So, like, it had scripted events that were going to happen. So that's kind of one of the things that we're trying to figure out, what events that we want to happen, or if we want each game to be basically randomized. And so that's kind of one of our main differences between us and the original. Any other comments or suggestions for us?
You can make the actual zombie infection dysentery. What you were saying before?
Dysentery reanimates dead bodies.
Yes. It's so the whole world is so disgusting that it's turning into
So
zombies.
dysentery has evolved.
Yes. So when you get a zombie infection, you've caught dysentery.
Okay.
I don't know.
So your team member has died from dysentery. Your team member has reanimated from dysentery.
You have to kill yourself.
Alright, well, I think we're going to take all the information that we've gotten from you guys and try and go from here. Yes. So, you're ready in December. At the end of this semester, we hope to have an app ready for release. So,
Is that last day of class or is that last day of finals?
Last of December.
I think that our last iteration ends the last day of classes. I'd have to look exactly on the calendar, but I'm pretty sure our last iteration ends on the last day of classes. So hopefully we'll have it for more open testing. I guess you could say a beta release by the end, but that's our goal.
Are you planning any presentations between now and that time? Or
Yes,
final presentation?
because we're kind of our own client at the moment, we had to come up with a project really quick. We wanted to do maybe, I don't know after every iteration, but after every major milestone, like maybe after we get all of the game logic working, our idea is to get the save games and the menus and the buttons working first, because those are all are encoded in Android, and get the game working conceptually first, so we can start bug testing logic and then fill in the graphics later. So we'll probably do one after all the logic is done, and then another one once the graphics is done, to kind of show everybody the progress.
We have another presentation like this scheduled for the last Friday. I'm prepared to do that. I think that will be somewhere between your third.
So that would be where the logic is
The
finished,
logic
the graphics would be.
Lastly, we have the final exam period to present the graphics.
Anything else for us? All right. Well, we'll keep in touch.